Hello and welcome to News Round, a recap of stories that made headlines during the week. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. The headlines. President Muhammadu Buhari signs 21.83 trillion naira appropriation bill into law. NFIU rules out cash transactions on public accounts from March the 1st. INEC and National Youth Service Corps NYSC deliberate on security and welfare of corps members during the forthcoming general elections. Plus, Pope Francis lead Catholics in bidding farewell to ex-Pope Benedict. That's News Round in View. News Round begins with the 2023 appropriation bill signed into law by President Muhammadu Buhari. Well, he signed the law with a total expenditure of 21.83 trillion naira. President Buhari assented to the total expenditure of 21.83 trillion naira and the 2022 supplementary appropriation bill at the council chamber. According to him, he signed the budget as passed by the National Assembly to enable the immediate commencement of its implementation, considering the imminent transition process to another democratically elected government.
It is the first workday of 2023, and the President begins the year by presiding over the signing ceremony of the final budget of his presidency at the Council chamber. Themed a budget of fiscal sustainability and transition, the President, flanked by the leadership of the National Assembly and some members of the executive, then signed the 2023 appropriation bill alongside the 2022 supplementary budget into law. The President remarks that in spite of his signing, there are concerns bordering on changes to the executive budget's proposal made by the National Assembly, which needs to be addressed.
I have also noted that the National Assembly introduced new projects into the 2023 budget proposal, for which it has appropriated 770.72 billion naira. The National Assembly also increased the provisions made by ministries, departments and agencies by 58.55 billion naira. Nonetheless, considering the imminent transition process to another democratically elected government, I decided to sign the 2023 appropriation bill into law as passed by the National Assembly to enable its implementation to commence without delay. I have, however, directed the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning to engage with the legislature to revisit some of the changes made to the executive budget proposal.
The President made clear that the budget design takes into consideration strengthening the economy as well as smooth conduct of the elections and transition. He equally urged the legislative body to reconsider its stance on the proposed ways and means advance from the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Failure to grant the securitization approval will, however, cost the government about 1.8 trillion naira in additional interest.
The leadership of the National Assembly subsequently responds to the President's earlier request.
While we are trying to consider and pass the request, we will insist on getting the right documents for our committees to ensure that whatever they advise us to do in the two chambers are based on information and knowledge and not just passing ways and means without knowing what it is.
The executive did everything they could. And we have even a wider view, a bird's eye view of what's going on in all the agencies. And we have also complimented what the executive has done. There's no you did, you didn't do. No, it's all for the good of the country.
Now, as a matter of routine, the Minister of Finance will give a breakdown of the 2023 budget at least before Wednesday. But more importantly, it appears as though the executive and legislative arm have decided to take up the challenge of ramping up the nation's revenue and minimizing deficits. Now, these are critical issues they say will receive utmost attention before the end of this administration. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Still on the 2023 budget, the federal government has restated its resolve to stop the payment of fuel subsidy by the end of June this year. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, stated this during the public presentation of the 2023 budget breakdown in Abuja. The Finance Minister explains that the federal government has already made provisions of 3.36 trillion naira for fuel subsidy payment to cover the first 6 months of this year.
Minister, Finance, Budget...
24 hours after President Muhammadu Buhari assented to the 2023 Appropriation Act, the Minister of Finance and the company of some key government officials have gathered here to give some insights to the document.
You can do better.
First, the Director General of the Budget Office reminds Nigerians that the nation has enjoyed a January to December budget cycle in recent times, and he promises to ensure transparency in the implementation of the 2023 budget.
We deliberately changed the format of the budget to provide detailed information on the revenue side of the budget, which hitherto used to simply reside in a schedule to the budget, in the fiscal framework schedule. And so I really would, like to encourage us to make the discussions around the 2023 budget more about, revenues.
The Minister of Finance then takes the stage, highlighting the country's 2022 budget performance amidst global shocks. The nation's revenue performance as at November 2022 stood at 6.5 trillion naira, representing 87% of the set target of 7.8 trillion naira for the year. An analysis of the key contributors to the revenue collection, according to the Minister of Finance and Planning, includes a 586 billion naira collection from the federal government, customs 15 billion naira, independent revenue collection 1.3 trillion naira, as well as a 3.7 trillion naira collection from other sources of revenue. Top sectors that contributed to the growth of the economy in 2022 includes agriculture, information and communications technology, trade, manufacturing, with oil and gas contributing just about 5.6%.
Me and for this administration...
The minister also speaks on government's plans to remove fuel subsidy by the month of June.
The projected fiscal outcomes in the 2023 budget is based on petroleum subsidy reform ratio, and that is to say in the 2023 framework, we had assumed and the National Assembly had approved that the petroleum subsidy will remain up to the middle of 2023 based on the 18 months extension announced early in 2022. In this regard, only 3.36 trillion has been provided for PMS subsidy in the 2023 budget.
Some of the parameters for the 2023 budget includes an oil price benchmark of $75 per barrel. Gross domestic product growth is projected at 3.75% in 2023 compared to 4.39%, and economic growth expected to moderate to 3.30% in 2024 before picking up to 3.46% in 2025. The overall budget deficit is 11.34 trillion naira, representing a 5.03% of GDP. The deficit is to be financed mainly by borrowings from foreign and domestic sources, as well as privatization proceeds, which is estimated at 206 billion naira, amongst others.
At 6.31 trillion, debt service is 29% of total government expenditure. At 6.31%, debt service is 29% of total government expenditure. This is 71% higher than the estimate for 2022, and it includes interest repayment of 1.2 trillion for the CVN overdraft that is popularly called the Ways and Means.
The 2023 Appropriation Act is the last budget by the President Buhari administration. The government is promising to reflate the economy to withstand the effects of a likely global recession, projections by the International Monetary Fund, IMF. From March the 1st, a 3-year jail term will be served to any government official who make cash withdrawals from all federal, state and local government public accounts. This is according to the Director General of the NFIU, Mr. Modibo Tukur, who made this known during a news conference in Abuja. He says the agency will trigger investigation processes on any office holder who engages in cash transactions on public accounts after the end of February this year. Our preparations for the general elections in less than 2 months, and one group of Nigerians that would play a key role in the exercise is the National Youth Service Corps members. For this reason, the chairman of INEC, that's the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, has been meeting with the Acting Director General of the NYSC, Mrs. Christy Uba, in Abuja, on how to prioritize their security and welfare during the elections.
The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, arrives at the conference hall of the National Youth Service Corps, NYSC, along with some INEC national commissioners. The INEC chairman is meeting with the Acting Director General of the NYSC to fine-tune arrangements for the participation of corps members in the forthcoming general elections.
We are here basically to thank you, the Acting DG, and to thank the NYSC for your consistent support. The truth is that INEC can't conduct elections successfully without the NYSC. That's the truth.
Youth Corps members form a big chunk of ad hoc staff for the electoral umpire during the conduct of elections, and INEC would be needing more of their services next month following the increased introduction of technology for the exercise.
The National Youth Corps members are our most reliable, most readily available, most educated, most patriotic, the largest number of election duty staff in the country. So we simply can't conduct elections without the support of the Youth Corps members. And this is very important, particularly now that we're introducing increasingly more and more technology in the conduct of elections.
While promising INEC of its continued support, the Acting Director General of the NYSC appeals to the electoral body to scale up the security and welfare of corps members who will participate in the elections.
We need to work in our present reality. There is need to look at review of the allowance paid to the corps members in view of the prevailing economic reality. Also on our part, we have directed all state coordinators to liaise with DSS and other security agencies to identify crisis-prone areas in the state and forward same to the headquarters.
It's less than 50 days to the 2023 general elections, which will commence with the presidential and National Assembly elections on February 25th. An exercise the electoral umpire is depending on corps members for its success.
And when we come back on the news round, Pope Francis lead Catholics in bidding farewell to ex-Pope Benedict. Join us again. Welcome back to News Round. Residents of Chikakore, a community in Buari Area Council of the Federal Capital Territory, are asking the federal government to construct a bridge or provide a barricade across the rail line that passes through the community. This follows the recent death of Mrs. Selimat Suleiman, a resident of the community who was killed by a moving train while trying to cross the rail in her car.
People should leave me alone and allow the soul of my wife to rest in perfect peace.
Mr. Fatai Suleiman is bitter over the death of his wife, Mrs. Selimat Suleiman, who got hit by a train while trying to cross a rail line in a car on the 15th of December 2022.
My wife did not commit suicide. The lateness of this Govt tree killed my wife. You have seen it. I don't need any of their condolences. I don't need their money. I don't even need anything from them. I leave everything for God to judge. We have lived in this place for more than 9 years. That train met us here, and we have done everything humanly possible to make sure that this kind of danger was averted.
His feelings resonate with residents of Chikakore community where the incident occurred, and he currently resides with his family. The community, located about 15 kilometers away from the heart of Abuja, has hundreds of households. However, there is no motorable roads in the community. Residents depend on these untarred roads when going out and coming in. Most times, it's a drudgery experience for motorists trying to cross the rail line, with some of them getting stuck in the process. This is what happens to residents in Chikakore Hillside community every time they want to cross this side of the rail line. Sometimes they get stuck and they have to struggle with their vehicles or whatever means of transportation they are using. Like Suleiman, it could be late for some of them. The absence of a safe means of crossing the rail line in the community increases the feeling of apprehension and frustration among the residents.
A train moving, it's unlike a vehicle that could stop when easily, abruptly when there is danger ahead. So each time community members are crossing this rail, we cross with a lot of fear. Like sometimes the train may not even give adequate notice. How do we get the notice? The booming horn of a train should have been blasting from some distance, quite enough kilometers, for people to be fully aware.
There are also no warning signals provided by the Nigerian Railway Corporation in the area to warn commuters on the dangers of crossing the rail line. Worse still, there is no personnel to deter pedestrians or motorists whenever a train is passing. This increases the risk faced by Chikakore residents. However, in a statement signed by its spokesman, Mr. Mahmoud Yakub, the Nigerian Railway Corporation says the federal government policy on railway modernization is ensuring the safety of motorists and trains through the construction of overpasses in all railway lines constructions. It says 2 overpasses were constructed at different locations within the Kubwa-Abuja environs for ease and safety of crossing railway lines of Abuja-Kaduna train service. But the residents of Chikakore claim that the overpasses are not motorable and occupied by miscreants, which makes them prone to attacks. More lives could be at risk if nothing is done to address the current situation here at Chikakore Hillside community. The residents say that there is the urgency of now on the part of the government to do what it is supposed to do by either creating a bridge that will cross this rail line or putting in place signs, warning signals that would serve as warning for residents whenever a train is passing. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Following the demolition of the Durumi internally displaced camp by the Federal Capital Territory authorities on December the 21st, 2022, those affected are now calling for urgent assistance. The chairman of the Durumi IDP camp, Mr. Ibrahim Amadu, is asking the federal government to come to their aid as they are currently stranded.
This is what is left of the camp for internally displaced persons in Durumi, Abuja, after it was demolished on Wednesday, December 21, 2022. Some IDPs are still trying to rebuild what is left of their houses, which have been their home for the past 10 years. The delegation from Action Aid is in the camp to assess the level of damage and interact with some of the residents. They come bearing relief materials.
Women and children currently are sleeping in open spaces. Some of them with mats and blankets. Some of them do not have any other thing, as we're being told from the camps, that some of them, even quickly ran with a few of their things to an environment that was also set ablaze. Starvation and hunger now prevail due to the loss of their saved foodstuff and their cooking utensils. Even cooking utensils, even if you are going to demolish a place, would you not tell people to pack their things out? But they demolished everything.
According to the FCT authority, the demolition became necessary because of the presence of miscreants in the camp. However, this is disputed by the displaced persons.
They said that there are criminals here. As far as I'm concerned, where unknown criminals are residing is called Monkey Village. It borders the Federal Secretariat complex. Why it took so long for the government agencies to deal with that area, we don't know. So this issue that there are criminals infiltrating the IDP, no IDP will tolerate a criminal. And let me tell you, nobody was the name of a kidnapper or armed robber who come and stay in a bacha here. They can afford hotels, they can afford houses at Kabusa, and that rent it or build it.
More than 3,000 people here inside this camp. I tell the government, I need help. Most of it, I need help. They are scatter our places.
They appeal to the government to urgently establish an organized camp to resettle them.
Finally, on News Round, Pope Francis has given the homily for the late Pope Benedict XVI at his funeral in St. Peter's Square, Vatican City. Around 50,000 mourners gathered for the Mass. According to the Vatican, it is unprecedented in modern times for a living Pope to bury his predecessor.
The moment showing crowds arriving as day broke over the Vatican ahead of the funeral for former Pope Benedict, who died on Saturday, December 31, at the age of 95. Among the 50,000 people in attendance are official delegations from Italy and Benedict's native Germany. Other leaders, including the King and Queen of Belgium, and about 13 heads of state or government attend in private capacity, while most countries are represented by their ambassadors to the Vatican.
Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen.
The funeral mass began with Pope Francis presiding in St. Peter's Square.
Pax vobis.
Holding fast to the Lord's last words and to the witness of his entire life, we too as an ecclesial community want to follow in his steps, and to commend our brother into the hands of the Father. May those merciful hands find this lamp alight with the oil of the gospel that he spread and testified for his entire life.
After the funeral, Pope Francis bids an emotional farewell to his predecessor, former Pope Benedict, as he touches the coffin. And just as pallbearers carried the coffin of the former Pope Benedict away at the end of Mass, there was a wave of applause in St. Peter's Square, with faithful shouting, Sanctus subito, a phrase that means saint now in Italian. The coffin was taken back inside the basilica and encased in zinc before being sealed in a second wooden casket.
Well, it's kind of sad, the news about the death of the Pope, but of course it's a beautiful celebration, and I think it represents a lot about his life and what he expected. A simple celebration, but very beautiful.
Not really emotional, but impressive. It was really impressive. Because also I'm an atheist, so it's different for me. I'm not used to it.
Applause broke out across the vast cobbled esplanade, which was shrouded in mist, in a sign of respect for Benedict, a hero to Roman Catholic conservatives who shocked the world by resigning nearly a decade ago. For some who attended the funeral, it was a sad but meaningful day. Pope Benedict XVI is buried in a private service according to his wishes under St. Peter's Basilica.
And that's a wrap on News Round, a recap of stories that made headlines during the week. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ayo Tunde Balu.